This is my very first Dr. Curtis Reads. I thought I'd make this account too because I couldn't fit the whole book review on Instagram. So this is basically a channel about books that I find really interesting, or books that I really want to talk about too. And there's not enough space on other mediums too, but I'm always looking for book recommendations too. So if you have any, do feel free to reach out and let me know what you're reading, what is interesting for you, or something you'd like to read maybe. Maybe I can cover it. So the first book we're going to look at is one of my favorite authors too, Joyce Carol Oates' latest offering, which is Fox. Just came out this year. I got the nice hardcover copy too. Really cool details too. So we have the kind of crime scene on the front too, little speckles of blood too. So something has gone amiss too. This was a great book too. So I love Joyce Carol Oates. I read about 20 or 30 of her books too. When I finished my PhD in 2017, I took a little break from my medieval research and I read about 10 of her books. I got a lot of them out of the library, everything from text on boxing to a lot of her short story collections to her novels. She's really prolific too. She's written about 50, 60 different novels, and that's just the novels alone too. Feels like every year she's coming out with something new. And I think her output is so inspiring too. She seems to write all the time. She always has new books coming out. And you never know, I find her recent output is among some of her best too. I mean, she came with the Book of American Martyrs a few years ago, which is about the abortion debate in the US. That was really well done. I think that's probably one of my favorite books from her too. So she also had the book Babysitter, which came out a couple years ago too. I think that was really well done as well too. But this one really grabbed me. I think if you can get your hands on it too, or even wait for it to be in paperback, I always feel it's nice to have the physical copy of a book rather than an online PDF. But if you prefer reading things online, or if it's more cost efficient for you, I say go for it too. But I always like holding the book in my hands, being able to smell it, being able to feel it too. I think that's really important too. So Fox is the title of this book too. Fox in more ways than one too. Oates as a writer is really interested in ambiguity too. We also see that with this particular text too. Not the first time talking about the Fox thing too. Obviously, a couple decades ago, she wrote Foxfire, which they adapted into a film too, and that was about a group of teenage girls in the 50s who kind of get revenge on their kind of misogynistic teachers too, the sexist teachers too. So there's always kind of a recurring theme too. And I was lucky enough to write to Joyce Carol Oates once when I was doing my PhD in Northern England. And she actually wrote back to me, and I said, is there anything you wouldn't kind of write about too? And she always said, I don't like topics that are too nihilistic. I always want my characters to have some sense of hope, some kind of sense of redemption too. So that's kind of a recurring idea in her text, even when things get really rough too. And sometimes the characters, especially the female characters, go through a lot too. She's a really strong feminist writer too, so she draws attention to she gives voices to a lot of these female characters who wouldn't have voices otherwise, which is really important, I think. And this book in particular, as with most of her books, very cerebral, very engrossing, very disturbing too, so it's not an easy recommendation. I don't think any of her books are easy reading too. They always make you think. They are meant to provoke, make you ask questions too, really important. And the book is about Francis Fox, Mr. Francis Fox, who is the new faculty member at Langhorne Academy. This is an academy, very prestigious school in a small town in the U.S. It's for students it's basically like a middle school, high school, and it's a private school, so they kind of gear them up for getting into the Ivy League colleges too. So very controversial in its own way too. Obviously, this town is kind of susceptible to the town versus gown relationship too. A lot of the locals are kind of disdainful of the academy because it's very insular. It's very they keep to themselves. The students are kind of seen as arrogant and kind of smug. So there's kind of a social class divide too, and that kind of plays into it, which I think is really well done too. Particularly how she kind of shifts the narratives between different characters in the text too. So going back to Francis Fox, he's kind of new on the block. He's charismatic. He's handsome. He's popular with the students and with women. Kind of almost this magnetic charisma, but people can't really identify with him. He's very elusive too, much like a metaphorical fox too. But we also see this darker side too. We learn this from what they discovered during the investigation. and also you know, when we actually get within Fox's head itself in the third person narrative, I think it's good that she does it in third person, not like first person narrative as Nabokov does with Lolita. We'll talk about that more later too. But we also find out that Francis Fox is sociopathic, he's predatory, he's substantially empty too, so he's really interested in a lot of writers like Poe um, and Lewis Carroll too, but not for kind of the quality of their artwork. It's more kind of the more insidious aspects too, so they're kind of pedophilic urges or unhealthy interests, unhealthy appetites too. And what's recurring through the text too is he won a competition for writing a Poe-inspired piece, and he has this ugly, big-ass statue on his desk to commemorating that too, and that kind of becomes symbolic in its own way later in the text. I will say too, this review, I'm not very good usually with spoilers, but I'm going to try really hard to move away from spoilers, but I am going to try and engage with the substance of the text without giving too much away, because I think the plots and twists in this text, especially towards the end, are really well done, and I feel like I want you to enjoy it and be as shocked as I was, watch your jaw drop when you read those final few hundred pages too. So yeah, Mr. Fox is not a good guy. He's sociopathic, he's predatory, he's substantially empty, sadistic, cruel, and we also find out he's a pedophile who abuses his female students too, so he likes girls who are 10 to 12 years of age too, and he calls them his little kittens too. So it is quite disturbing in that aspect. We get kind of inside his head and we get exposed to these desires that he has too. When the story starts off too, again it switches between timelines, so we get his time at the academy when he's working there. We also get his time beforehand, so what got him into where he was too, so he had to leave a lot of the previous schools for obviously his terrible behavior. And we also have the aftermath of what happens. So when the book starts, this isn't a spoiler, he's found dead in his car with a shattered skull and with significant animal activity too. So almost unrecognizable too. He's found in the wilderness, and he's discovered there too in his car too. And it looks like an accident. It's made to look like an accident, like the car drove off a cliff. But there's more to it than we think too. And what's interesting too is when he is discovered, it's just almost unrecognizable. Animals have eaten off his face too. Very kind of almost an Old Testament death, I think too. And I think, you know, in death he kind of appears quite monstrous too. You know, we see what he really looks like, and even the police officers who are handling the investigation have a hard time looking at his face because it's so horrific, the damage done too. So yeah, as I said too, Joyce Carol Oates kind of alternates between the different timelines too. So we have the before, during, and after to get to explore his past, and also something that Joyce Carol Oates is really interested in is kind of exploring the consequences for these kind of catastrophic events for the people around them, how they kind of respond to it, how they interact with each other after the event, how they respond to the incident, how it changes them as well too. That's kind of recurring throughout her works too, but she's kind of a master at really capturing that too. So she alternates perspectives too. We get subject to Fox and his victims, but also the people around him, the custodians in the school, the headmistress who he works for, the women who are kind of in love with him, the adult girlfriends that he has. He's not really interested in women, but he has the facade of, you know, having all these girlfriends because he's a good-looking guy. And I think it's interesting too, just going, you know, how Joyce plays around with that timeline as well too, because it disorients readers too, but it also shows the fragments of a crime, and also the crimes as we find out, because he's had several kind of little girls under his lens too, abusing these girls for a long period of time. We don't know for how long exactly, but through different schools we find out it's been going on for years. And I think free and direct speech in terms of the narrative works really well here too. We have kind of this dissonance between Fox's what Fox says and how he says it, and how he performs in public with what he's really thinking, the shamelessness and heinousness of his act, the kind of self-righteousness, the smug little responses he has in italics when people are talking to him too. I think in the free and direct speech, excuse my language, he calls the headmistress a cunt too, and obviously you can't say that he wouldn't be able to say that to her face, but you really get to the nitty gritty of what he's really thinking too. So the free and direct speech shows us what he really thinks, kind of the misogyny, deeply rooted misogyny, I would say. Also his delusions too. He compares kind of the girls to images of art like Balthus. So again, we get that kind of Nabokov, Humbert allusion again to, right, to justify what he's doing, to make it, more normalized. But we know better too. And I think it's nice that using third person, that Joyce gives us that distance from him in that way too, so we can kind of step back and realize how awful and how monstrous he is, rather than being, unintentionally seduced by his charm, which is what happens to a lot of people in this book too. So we get kind of exposed to these insidious desires too, and we also see how he kind of eschews personal responsibility too. So there's one scene that really stood out for me in the book, and I don't think it's spoiling it. One of the girls at his former school committed suicide when the scandal broke out that he was abusing women, or little girls, I should say. And the lawyer, he has a really good defense lawyer. The defense lawyer basically because there's no evidence to prove, because the little girl killed herself, he basically helps him win the case. And then Fox is so excited, he doesn't feel bad about what he's done, obviously, he's very sociopathic, and he says, we should go out for drinks sometime. And you can see the lawyer just, doesn't want to have anything to do with him too. But at the same time, it's these kind of people that enable these kind of sick people in society as well too. Like Humbert, Fox uses language and kind of his charm. He's good at reading people's behavior. He's good at kind of analyzing, pinpointing their faults and exploiting those faults. And he uses that to kind of justify kind of his sexual abuse and depredation as well too. So as we see, the abuse has short-term and long-term consequences too. We have these revelations. Again, I won't get into spoiler territory too much, but we have revelations from victims years later who are still kind of under his spell. They're still kind of, he has this almost like Pied Piper effect on him too, like an evil kind of Pied Piper. And I think for a lot of the victims too, it's hard for them to come forwards too, and I think it's because that denial is much easier than hard truths too. And he tries to normalize this kind of heinous behavior as the text goes on too. And what's also quite problematic too, and I mean, much as is the case with a lot of pedophiles and abusers, like Michael Jackson, for example, he would discard the children when he loses interest too. We see that with Michael Jackson. That's controversial that, I'm pretty sure Michael Jackson was a pedophile, but Michael Jackson would just kind of discard women when he was kind of tired, or discard boys when he was kind of tired with them. So similar to this too, and kind of obviously oblivious to the psychological damage that it creates for years afterwards. So really interesting structure to the book too. We have kind of, the first section is kind of exposure to the crimes. It kind of introduces to the story. The second part of the story focuses more on Fox himself too, and then the final part of the story is the investigation. So after he's died, there's a team investigating what happened to him too. And the book also critiques the society that enables him to not only survive but to thrive in this setting. He has no business teaching in his school. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that says that he shouldn't, but nobody is really doing their job. They're more concerned about appearances, more concerned about creating that facade than ensuring that the children are actually safe. So again, not only is he substantially empty, but I would say also the society that kind of enables him is also society. So we have kind of his adult girlfriends who are smitten more with the idea or concept of someone like Fox rather than recognize his true nature too. And we have a police detective investigating the case who describes himself as an incel, and who gets off to shooting down what he calls arrogant women, quote unquote, too. So this is a society that's desperate for appearance and easy to satisfy too. They kind of get suckered in too, and it reminded me of very similar to the Jimmy Savile abuse case. Jimmy Savile was he worked for the BBC for many decades too, and he was put in such a position of authority that nobody could kind of question him too. And shame on the BBC for not speaking up with that too. I think John Lydon from the Sex Pistols actually had a really good segment where he was kind of talking about his crimes too, but they covered it up for years. And they found out after his death in 2011 that Jimmy Savile abused not dozens but hundreds of children. And I think children's lives and welfare should always come first. That's a non-negotiable point for me too. So, like Jimmy Savile, Fox gets away with it for so long because he is white, because he is, well, Savile wasn't handsome, but because he's white, because he's handsome, because he's a man, because he knows that these people are shallow enough to be charmed without asking too many questions, right? So I think this book really suggests that there's this need to overcome this inability to reconcile good looks with monstrousness too. So someone can be good looking and chaotically evil too, right? And this is the legacy of serial killers too. A lot of the fetishization to or glorification of these serial killers comes from the fact that they were good looking, someone like Ted Bundy, or young Michael Jackson too. And he can't be a philanthropist and nice looking and raping children. But I mean, we have to deal with that reality. You can have someone who's very giving, philanthropic, I think that's the word, giving donations, but also kind of a sick, twisted person too. So someone can be pretty and also chaotically evil, and that's what we get with Fox. And I think Joyce Carol Oates is excellent in getting us to confront that fact too. So Fox, as we find out, is this kind of master manipulator who succeeds at what he gets. He plays the system to get away with the perversities that he wants, much like Jimmy Savile. And I think it's interesting in this text too. So he admires Poe, and I think Joyce is very conscious of this, and she's very tongue-in-cheek about it too. It's same with the Lolita too. He does have this kind of telltale heart moment in the book too, which is really interesting. And just as a quick reminder, Telltale Heart is a short story by Poe, probably his best known short story. It's excellent. If you haven't read it, read this, read it, watch it, or read it. And it's about a narrator who's killed someone too, and he gets this kind of guilty conscience too. There's this beating heart of the victim too, and it's a metaphor for his guilt and conscience. And we have this kind of moment in the text too. But what's ironic is that Fox doesn't have a heart. He has no guilt or conscience for anything he's done too. He manipulates everyone around him, and no one knows who he really is too. So it shows kind of just how empty he is too. When you cut past all the charm, there's not a lot there. So, and I thought it's interesting with the name Fox too. Obviously, the fox is symbolic too. He changes his name, as we learn later in the novel too. The fox is kind of an elusive figure too, and kind of mysterious too. There's also kind of a predatory aspect too, as they're predators. But if we think about like the medieval tradition too, with Renadine, he was this kind of charismatic man who would kind of was a werefox, and he would kind of kidnap, seduce beautiful young women, and he'd take them to his castle, and you never see them again. And very similar to that in this way, he's kind of this evil Pied Piper. He's preying off young girls and kind of stealing their souls, stealing their innocence, stealing their younger selves too, and ruining that forever too, which is probably one of the worst things I think you can do. And obviously the story kind of more superficially frames itself as a kind of murder mystery. The mystery is, how did Fox die, who killed him too. But I mean, it's kind of a murder mystery in the sense of Twin Peaks, with Laura Palmer too. It's not really about who killed Laura Palmer, though we find that out later. And same here. I mean, it is a very satisfying ending. We do find out who killed him. It's not what I thought, and it was really brilliantly executed. I think it's the best possible ending. Consider all the circumstances. And it's a whopping text too. I mean, it's huge. I think it's 600 pages. Yeah, almost 650 pages. So you won't be able to read this at night, but you won't be able to put it down. I'll put it that way. So yeah, I think Francis Fox's death is kind of a framing device to explore the actions in life, how people responded to him. As I said, something that Joyce Carol Oates does so well as a writer too. So yeah, obviously there's comparisons with Lolita too, as I said too. Again, I think Oates is very tongue-in-cheek about it too. And I think it's a much better book. I love Lolita as a text. It's one of my favorite books, but I think it's better in some ways too, because it enables us to keep our distance from Fox while also kind of identifying and recognizing his kind of machinations to what makes him tick, and how kind of messed up he is as an individual too. And it also, I think, what this does better than Lolita is it narrativizes the victim's voices and experiences, and it engenders kind of a victim-focused empathy, and I think that's really important too. And what's kind of ironic about Fox is that Fox actually rejects Humbert Humbert too. He rejects Lolita as a book too. He's very firm about it actually. He thinks it should be banned too. So yeah, Fox is this kind of embodiment of white male privilege. He gets away with it because he's white, because he's a man, and I think that's really important. And I think Oates wants us to recognize it too. There's this kind of danger in letting these people roam free, and we see kind of the damage that's done, not only to his victims, but also a lot of the families, a lot of the people around him too. And it's really important that we kind of confront this issue too. So it's an amazing book. That's Joyce Carol Oates. I think it's one of her best books. I'm excited to see what she writes next. She's 85 now, and I think you never know what her next book is going to be like. It could be even better than this one. Who knows? But I love this book. It took me a couple days to read it. Definitely worth ordering, worth checking out. As I said too, if you have any book recommendations, or if you want me to check out anything too, I'm very kind of eclectic and sometimes picky, but I try to keep an open mind with reading. But this channel is mostly for books that I'm really excited to talk about, that I'm really gushing about, and I don't really have a platform for that. So I hope you enjoy it, and let me know what you think, and let me know if you have any thoughts about Fox too. So we'll see you next time.